Have you ever felt it? That quiet, aching moment when something inside you just breaks? Not in a loud, dramatic way, but in a subtle, soul-deep way. The weight of carrying everyone else's expectations, the masks you've worn to fit in, the life you've built to please others, it all becomes too much. And in that moment, something has to change. This is where your journey begins. This is where you begin to find you. Today we're diving into a transformative journey inspired by the profound psychology of Carl Jung, a journey of breaking free from the chains of external expectations and discovering the authentic self within. This isn't just a video, it's an invitation to explore the depths of your psyche, to confront your fears, and to embrace the power of self-love. By the end, you'll understand what it means to live authentically, and you'll be inspired to take the first step on your own path. So grab a notebook, settle in, and let's begin. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you can join our community of seekers on this incredible journey.
The breaking point and the call to individuation.
Carl Jung, one of the most influential psychologists of the 20th century, believed that every person carries within them a unique essence, a true self that is often buried under layers of societal conditioning, familial expectations, and personal fears. He called the process of uncovering this true self individuation. But individuation doesn't begin with a grand epiphany. It begins with a breaking point. That breaking point is universal. It's the moment when you realize you can no longer live for others. Maybe it's after years of people-pleasing, of saying yes when you wanted to say no, of dimming your light to make others comfortable. Your soul grows tired, not just of the external pressures, but of betraying yourself. Jung described this as the psyche's cry for wholeness, a call to stop living a fragmented life and start aligning with your deepest truth. As a psychologist who has studied Jung for decades, I've seen this breaking point in countless clients, and I've experienced it myself. It's not just emotional exhaustion, it's existential. It's the moment when you realize that the life you've built isn't yours. Jung's genius lies in his understanding that this pain is not a dead end but a doorway. The breaking point is the psyche's way of saying, enough. It's time to become who you were meant to be. But how do we answer that call? It starts with something deceptively simple: silence.
The silent shift.
The moment of change doesn't come with trumpets or fanfare. There's no billboard announcing, your life is about to transform. Instead, it's subtle, almost imperceptible. Jung wrote that the psyche often speaks in whispers, and it's only when we're emotionally exhausted that we finally listen. For many, this moment comes after years of trying to fix themselves to fit into someone else's mold, whether it's a parent's expectations, a partner's demands, or society's definition of success. In my practice, I've observed that this silent shift often follows a period of what Jung called enantiodromia, the tendency for extremes to turn into their opposites. When you've pushed yourself to the limit of self-sacrifice, the psyche rebels, swinging towards self-preservation. This isn't selfishness, it's survival. Jung believed that the unconscious is always working to restore balance, and this quiet moment of realization is the unconscious breaking through. It's the first step toward individuation, where you begin to prioritize your inner voice over the noise of the world. I remember a client, let's call her Sarah, who came to me after years of being the perfect daughter, wife, and employee. She described a moment when she was driving home from work, and for no apparent reason, she pulled over and cried. Not out of sadness, but out of clarity. She realized she didn't know who she was anymore. That was her silent shift, the moment her psyche said, no more. It's a moment we all face, and it's both terrifying and liberating. The power of no more. After the silent shift comes the decision to say no more. This isn't just a refusal to continue old patterns. It's a declaration of sovereignty over your own life. Jung taught that the unconscious is always pushing us toward wholeness, and this decision is a response to that inner call. It's the beginning of an irreversible journey toward authenticity, a journey that requires courage, because saying no more often means disappointing others. In Jungian terms, this moment marks the activation of the self, the archetype of wholeness that lies at the center of the psyche. The self is not the ego, which is concerned with external validation and survival. The self is the guiding force that knows your true purpose and pushes you toward it, even when the ego resists. Saying no more is the ego surrendering to the self, acknowledging that the old way of living is no longer sustainable. What's fascinating about this stage is how universal it is, yet how personal it feels. In my research, I found that the decision to say no more often comes after a series of smaller rebellions, moments when you test the waters of authenticity. Maybe you speak up in a meeting for the first time, or you stop apologizing for things that aren't your fault. These small acts build momentum, preparing you for the larger leap. But make no mistake, this leap is not easy. It requires confronting the parts of yourself you've kept hidden.
Self-love à libération.
Saying no more is not an act of rebellion for rebellion's sake. It's an act of self-love. Jung wrote extensively about the relationship between identity and suffering, noting that we often build our sense of self around pain. We become the martyr, the victim, the one who always sacrifices. But when we say no more, we begin to dismantle that identity. We start to see ourselves not as the sum of our wounds, but as beings capable of joy, creativity, and wholeness. In my years as a psychologist, I've come to believe that self-love is the cornerstone of all psychological healing. It's not about narcissism or self-indulgence. It's about recognizing your inherent worth, independent of what others think. Jung's insight here is profound. When we cling to an identity built on suffering, we trap ourselves in a cycle of pain. Self-love breaks that cycle. It's the moment when you realize you don't need to earn love, you already are love. Take my client, David, who spent decades trying to prove his worth through overwork and people-pleasing. When he finally said no more to his toxic workplace, he described it as coming home to myself. That's what self-love does. It brings you home. But this homecoming requires confronting the parts of yourself you've ignored, and that's where Jung's concept of the shadow comes in. Confronting the shadow. Jung's concept of the shadow is one of his most powerful contributions to psychology. The shadow is the part of ourselves we repress, the anger, the shame, the desires we deem unacceptable. It's the dark side of the psyche, but it's not evil. It's simply the parts of us we've pushed away to fit into society's mold. To become whole, we must confront the shadow, and this is where the real work of individuation begins. Jung believed that the shadow holds immense creative potential. When we repress it, we cut ourselves off from our vitality. But when we integrate it, we unlock new depths of strength and authenticity. Confronting the shadow is painful because it forces us to face our fears: fear of rejection, fear of failure, fear of being too much. Yet it's also transformative, because it allows us to reclaim the parts of ourselves we've disowned. In my practice, I've seen clients transform when they embrace their shadow. One woman, Anna, spent years suppressing her anger to be the nice girl. When she finally allowed herself to feel and express that anger, she discovered a wellspring of assertiveness and creativity. This is what Jung meant when he said, "The shadow is 90% pure gold." The parts of ourselves we fear are often the parts that hold the key to our liberation. The fear of letting go. Saying no more and confronting the shadow are only the beginning. The next challenge is fear. The fear that comes when you realize change means letting go. Letting go of toxic relationships, old habits, even the identity you've clung to. This fear is natural. It's the ego's resistance to the unknown. Jung called this the battle between the old and the new self. I've seen this fear in every client who embarks on this journey, and I've felt it myself. There's a comfort in the familiar, even if it's painful. The old self knows how to survive in toxic environments. The new self doesn't yet know how to thrive in freedom. But here's the truth. Fear is not a sign you're on the wrong path. It's a sign you're on the right one. Jung taught that growth requires tension, and fear is the tension between who you were and who you're becoming. Reclaiming your energy. When you let go of what no longer serves you, something remarkable happens. You reclaim your energy. Jung believed that our psychic energy is finite, and when we pour it into toxic relationships or environments, we deplete ourselves. But when we say no more, we redirect that energy inward, and it's like turning on a light in a dark room.
You feel alive again.
In my research, I've found that this reclamation of energy is often accompanied by physical changes. Clients report better sleep, more focus, even a renewed sense of curiosity. This is the psyche healing itself, restoring balance. Jung called this libido, not in the Freudian sense, but as the life force that drives us toward growth. When we stop leaking our energy to external demands, we rediscover our vitality. The birth of self-love. Out of this reclaimed energy comes a new kind of love, a love for yourself that doesn't depend on external validation. Jung wrote that true self-love is not about ego inflation, but about honoring the self, the divine spark within you. This love is quiet, steady, and unshakable. It's the realization that you are enough, just as you are. In my own journey, discovering self-love was like finding a hidden treasure. For years, I sought approval from others, thinking it would fill the void inside me. But when I started listening to my inner voice, I realized that the love I was seeking was already within me. This is what Jung meant when he said, "Who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakes." Clarity and new boundaries. With self-love comes clarity. You start to see toxic behaviors for what they are, not as personal failings, but as patterns that no longer serve you. You set new standards for how you want to be treated, and you do so without guilt. Jung believed that this clarity is a sign of psychological maturity, a shift from reacting to the world to consciously choosing how you engage with it. One of the most empowering aspects of this stage is realizing that healing is not about fixing others. It's about taking responsibility for your own well-being. In my practice, I teach clients to ask themselves, does this serve my growth? If the answer is no, they learn to let it go. This is the essence of Jung's individuation, becoming the author of your own life. Embracing solitude. Letting go of toxic dynamics often means facing solitude, and for many, this is the hardest part. We're conditioned to fear being alone, to equate it with loneliness. But Jung saw solitude as sacred, a space where the psyche can integrate and heal. In solitude, you confront the emptiness and discover that it's not empty at all. It's full of possibility. I believe solitude is where the real magic of individuation happens. It's where you learn to trust yourself, to enjoy your own company, to hear the voice of the self. In my work with clients, I've seen solitude transform people from anxious and approval-seeking to grounded and self-assured. Jung was right, loneliness does not come from having no people around, but from being unable to communicate the things that seem important to oneself, or from holding certain views which others find inadmissible. The chaos of transformation. Transformation is not a straight line. It's messy, chaotic, and sometimes disorienting. Jung described it as a descent into the unconscious, a journey through the underworld of the psyche before emerging into clarity. This chaos is necessary, because it breaks down the old structures that no longer serve you, making space for the new. In my research, I found that clients often resist this chaos, mistaking it for failure. But Jung taught that chaos is a sign of progress. It's the psyche reorganizing itself, like a caterpillar dissolving in the chrysalis before becoming a butterfly. The key is to embrace the uncertainty, to trust that clarity will come. Attracting new energy. As you align with your true self, something extraordinary happens. You start attracting people and opportunities that resonate with your new energy. Jung called this synchronicity, meaningful coincidences that reflect the alignment of the inner and outer worlds. You no longer need to chase love or approval, you radiate it, and it comes to you. I've seen this in my own life and in the lives of my clients. When you live authentically, the universe responds. It's not magic in the supernatural sense, but a natural consequence of being in harmony with your psyche. Jung believed that the individuated person becomes a magnet for what they need, because their energy is no longer scattered. Resisting the pull of the past. Even as you grow, there will be moments when the past calls you back. Old patterns, familiar relationships, the comfort of the known, they all tempt you to regress. Jung called this the regressive pull of the unconscious. But with self-love as your anchor, you can resist. You know your worth, and you refuse to settle for less. In my practice, I teach clients to see these moments as tests of their commitment to individuation. The psyche wants to know, are you serious about this? Each time you choose yourself, you strengthen your resolve. Jung believed that true growth requires repeated acts of courage, and this is where that courage shines.
The final test.
The final test of individuation is recognizing when relationships and situations no longer align with your values. This requires clarity, the clarity that comes from self-love. You no longer tolerate what diminishes you, not out of arrogance, but out of wisdom. You choose only what serves your growth.
This is the moment of true liberation.
In my years as a psychologist, I've seen clients reach this point and describe it as finally being free. It's not about cutting people off or becoming cold. It's about honoring your journey. Jung taught that the individuated person lives in harmony with their values, and this harmony radiates outward, transforming their life and the lives of those around them. Living authentically. When you live authentically, you no longer need to justify yourself to others. You move through the world with a quiet confidence, knowing that your worth comes from within. Jung called this living the myth of your own life, embracing your unique purpose and expressing it without fear. The result is magic. The right people, opportunities, and experiences find you. In my own life, living authentically has been the greatest gift. It's not about perfection, but about honesty, with myself and with the world. Jung believed that the individuated person becomes a light for others, not by preaching, but by being. When you live your truth, you give others permission to do the same.
Your journée de s'entendre.
Individuation is a lifelong process, and it's one we're meant to share. Jung believed that the individuated person contributes to the collective by living authentically. By sharing your story, you inspire others to embark on their own journeys. Together, we can create a world where self-love and self-awareness are the norm, not the exception. So, what's your next step? Take a moment to reflect. What's one thing you can say no more to today? Share it in the comments below, and let's build a community of growth and transformation. If this video resonated with you, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you don't miss our future explorations into the psyche. Together, we can change the world, one authentic self at a time. Thank you for joining me on this journey. Until next time, keep listening to your inner voice.
Hypnose the way.